So, an announcement trailer for Resident Evil 3 Remake just came out, and I'm extremely excited for it. But, what I will say is that outside of this game, recently there haven't really been too many horror games I've been excited to see. And of course, that makes me a bit sad, but I kind of get it. One important thing to remember is the simple fact that Silent Hill at this point is basically dead. Like, they haven't released a game for the PS4 and Xbox One. The only thing you can kind of argue is that maybe because PlayStation Now has Silent Hill 2 and 3 HD collection, maybe you could argue that, well, they did technically release one, but a new one? No, they haven't released anything like it. The game I have up in the background, that's actually the closest thing I've played recently to a new Silent Hill game, and I'm glad I played it. It's a completely different format, obviously, but in terms of the music, in terms of a lot of different things in the game itself, I think that they got the Silent Hill 2 vibes down to a pat. And aside from this game, and maybe The Evil Within, if you want to consider it that, there haven't really been any new games. And of course, that breaks my heart. But what I meant when I said that I kind of get it is that when you look at the modern day market of games, they usually want what they call live services. They want like multiplayer games. They want something they can continue to update, and they just need to have a crew who updates it and nothing else. They don't really want to take risks anymore. And you can make comments on greediness and all that, but when it comes to a horror game, both as a product from a consumer standpoint and from people who make it, you look into what it is that had to go in for Silent Hill to be made, the first one, and all the way up to 4, it required a lot of resources and a huge amount of risk for it to be done. And with all that being said, I'm assuming that at a certain point they wanted to stop taking risks and decided to just go for safe stuff. For me, as a gamer, is that I live for survival horror. That's the whole reason I even really got into video games. The creepiest game up until I played Resident Evil 3 on my mom's PC was probably Mortal Kombat. That was the creepiest game at any given point I had played, because at that point, I think the only one that was out that could render at a higher range than the N64 was probably the PlayStation, and I didn't get that till way later, once it was already going into the PS2 being released. So because of all of that, I'm kind of in a shit situation. I don't really have access to horror games now, so the only real, and I don't have access to a PC that can play games, so the only real thing I can do, which I did do, is get like a PS3 and play old school horror games. And I started thinking about this because one of the things I would mess with here and there whenever it was that like it was kind of like downtime, like in the summer, and when I had, of course, a stable access to a stable connection, was I would play PS Now. I know a lot of people, don't like it, and of course you don't own any of those games. But I started thinking, I only really play a couple of games. Like that's actually what led to me eventually buying Lone Survivor, this game in the background. It's actually eventually led to me playing it because that's what I would always do whenever I was in college and it was like on downtime or people weren't really awake like at 2 or 3 in the morning. That's whenever I would decide to play Lone Survivor mainly. Later on, I would play other games, but generally speaking, that was my game of choice. And what I started realizing was that over and over again, I only played Lone Survivor, I only played Siren, and I think maybe Silent Hill 2 and 3. Those are the only 3 games I ever played constantly on PS Now. So that just made me decide, you know what, let me just get a PS3 and play these games and get Lone Survivor on the PS4. Let me just do that because it saves me so much more money and I own those games. I can go back to it as often as I want without having to constantly pay another 20 bucks or whatever the amount is now per month to be able to have access to it. Those more attentive may have just recognized what it is I said not too long ago, which is that I played Silent Hill 2 and 3. And when it comes to Siren, when it comes to Lone Survivor, those are very good games. Whether they're on the PS3 or the PS4, they're very good games. And I'm glad I played them. Unfortunately, the game I played from PS Now, at the time they didn't actually have the PS2 classic version of Siren. They only had Blood Curse. And being that I didn't own a PS3 before, I played it for the first time and loved it. And that was one of the first games I bought for my PS3 once I got it. But while those two games are good, and they even have, of course, the thing that made me fall in love with the series all over again, they have Silent Hill 1, PS1 Classic, which of course I played to death. Still need to go back and get all the endings because the very first time I ever played that game, I got the bad ending. So I have to go back and get the good endings and the bad endings and, of course, be able to get all the weapons and all that. Basically, 100% that game. I've never been able to do that, and I want to do it now because I have the time to do it now. But anyway, I digress. Aside from PS1 and PS2 classics, um, the other two games I mentioned, Lone Survivor and Siren Blood Curse, those play pretty good, for sure. The one that it doesn't matter what you play it on, it's a bad game, is the HD collection. So people ask, well, if you're a Silent Hill fan, why are you playing the HD collection? And it's like, well, I found my old copy of Silent Hill 2 Restless Dreams for my Xbox. My 360 is broken, and even if it worked, I'm pretty sure it won't function on there because I tried it before and it didn't work. Disc ran fine. It recognized that the disc runs and it read the data, but first thing that popped up is that this is a game that you can't play, or something of that nature. It basically didn't let me play the game. But it did read it, so that's good. Maybe at some point I could play it. But anyway, Silent Hill 2 and 3, the HD collection, and this is not meant to be a rebuttal. It's not meant for me to start an argument. It's not meant for me to try to make the argument that console is better than PC. I am not going to make that argument. All I'm saying is that when it came right down to it, I was trying to unwind. I realized I missed Silent Hill 2 and 3. And at that point, actually, is around the time I got a PS Now to begin with. To play all these old school horror games I never had a chance with. And most of the games on PS Now are PS3 games, some PS2 classics, and some PS4 games. But the Silent Hill HD collection is the easiest way for me to play it. And that makes me sad, for one. Because I've come to realize that only certain games get redone, and I wish that they would have done PS2 classics on the PS3 or PS4 for Silent Hill 2 and 3. I never really played Manhunt. I don't know why the hell it's there. I think that maybe it was just what was popular, and in terms of like what was chosen to be in the classics series, I think maybe it was just what was popular and what they can get a hold of easily. And it's unfortunate that though I love this series so much, though I love Silent Hill 2 and 3 and even 4 so much, the Silent Hill series as a whole hasn't gotten as much love as the Resident Evil series. Obviously right now, because I ran out of Lone Survivor footage, I have a remake of Resident Evil 0. I had to wait about a good, I want to say like 5 years. Well, I was in college, I want to say, when this came out. As far as I know, I was in college when the Resident Evil 0 remake came out. I had to wait a good amount of time before I could do that. I played this game originally in high school. I'm sorry, no, middle school. And about middle school going into high school on my GameCube years ago. And I didn't get to play it again until well into college. So I had to wait, at least 5 years for me to be able to play it. But at least I still get to play it. I get to see the story all over again. I get to mess with the control scheme that they had that was specific for this game. I get to see Rebecca's story again. I get to see Billy's story again. It was a nice thing. I'm so happy I paid for this. I'm so happy I got this again. I'm so happy they were able to port it to a bunch of other stuff and that PC now has access to this. I was so happy when this came out. But unfortunately, there's not an equivalent for it. Being that I wanted to play Silent Hill 2 and 3, the only way I can do it on a console is through the HD collection. It made me realize that how poorly the Silent Hill series has been handled when compared to the Resident Evil series. I recently just got the remake for Resident Evil 2, and like I started this video off with, Resident Evil 3 is going to come out soon. 4, 5, and 6, I can play that on anything essentially. I can play that on my phone, I can play that on a PC, I can play that on a PS3, PS2, PS Now. I can play that on basically everything. And the realization that Silent Hill will never get to that point, it seems, and the level of difficulty that comes from that is a thought that makes me sometimes hate the fact that my genre of choice when it comes to video games is horror.